The human ship came out of hyperspace the wrong way. Instead of a clean drop near a navigation buoy, it staggered into real space like a wounded animal, alarms screaming and lights flickering. The hull was scarred from old damage, patched more times than the designers ever intended. One engine coughed, then died completely. The ship spun once, slow and helpless, before gravity from a nearby planet caught it and pulled it down. Inside the cockpit, the human soldier held on and swore softly. His name was Daniel Reyes. He was not supposed to be here. His mission had ended 3 jumps ago. His unit reassigned. His transport destroyed in a skirmish that history would probably forget. This small scout ship was all he had managed to steal before things went bad. He had fixed it enough to fly, enough to escape, but not enough to survive another failure. Now the planet below filled the forward screen. No cities, no satellites, no active traffic, just clouds, oceans, and long stretches of dark land. "Fine," Daniel muttered. "You win." The ship hit the atmosphere hard. Panels rattled. One display went black. The automated landing system failed, so Daniel took manual control, hands steady despite exhaustion. He guided the ship toward a flat stretch near what looked like ancient stone structures half buried in the ground. The landing was rough but survivable. The ship skidded, tore up soil, and finally came to rest with a long groan of stressed metal. Silence followed. Daniel stayed still for a moment, listening. No alarms, no decompression. He let out a breath he did not realize he was holding. "Well," he said to the empty cockpit, "we're not dead." He powered down what little he could and grabbed his toolkit. The air outside was breathable according to the scanner, though thin and cold. He stepped down onto alien soil and looked around. The ruins were older than anything he had ever seen. Stone towers leaned at strange angles, cracked but not fallen. Wide pathways ran between them, carved with patterns worn smooth by time. There was no sign of recent life. No tracks, no lights, just wind moving through broken arches. Daniel felt small. He shook the feeling off and turned back to the ship. Awe would not fix an engine. The damage was bad but familiar. Burned relays, a cracked power conduit, a stabilizer that had never quite worked right even before today. Daniel worked slowly, carefully, talking to himself as he always did when alone. "Okay, you and me," he told the ship. "One more time." He stripped panels, rerouted power, and used parts that had no business fitting together but somehow did. He used wire meant for sensors to stabilize a coolant valve. He sealed a crack with layered compounds and hoped it would hold. Hours passed. As the ship drew power from its auxiliary systems, something else noticed. Deep beneath the ruins, far below where light had touched for centuries, ancient systems stirred. A pulse of energy ran through conduits older than Daniel's entire species. Lights flickered on in long-abandoned halls. Sensors, dormant and forgotten, reached outward. They found a signal. Human. In a chamber of crystal and metal, an alien princess opened her eyes. Her name had once meant First Light of the Dawn, though no one remained who remembered that. She had slept longer than stars burned. Her people had chosen preservation over extinction, sealing her in stasis while the empire around her slowly faded into silence. She was alone now. The systems around her reported the impossible. External power had been restored. Core functions were active again. The palace was awake. And it was not her people who had done it. She rose from the stasis platform, movements slow but graceful, her long form adjusting to gravity once more. Her skin shimmered faintly, reflecting the soft glow of the chamber. Her eyes, large and dark, focused as information streamed into her mind. A lone being walked among the ruins, not one of her kind, not even close. The princess moved through the palace, unseen, observing through ancient sensors and hidden viewpoints. She watched the human work on his ship, his movements inefficient by her people's old standards, yet effective in a way that unsettled her. He used damaged tools. He reused broken parts. He ignored sacred design principles entirely. And still the machine responded. Where her people would have waited for perfection, the human accepted flaws and worked around them. Where they would have followed ritual, he followed instinct and experience. The princess felt something unfamiliar stir within her.
Curiosity. Daniel wiped sweat from his face and leaned back against the ship's hull.
The auxiliary generator hummed more steadily now. Power levels were still low, but stable. "That's something," he said. "Not great, but something." He noticed the lights then. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. A soft glow pulsed between the ruins, far away. Then another, closer. Lines of light traced along the ground, like veins. Daniel frowned. "That's new." He grabbed his scanner. Energy readings were rising, spreading outward from somewhere deep beneath the ruins. Whatever this place was, it was waking up. He felt a moment of worry. Then he shrugged. "Already crashed," he said. "Might as well see what I broke." He followed the lights, moving cautiously but not afraid. Fear took energy he could not spare. The air grew warmer as he walked, the ground smoother, less worn. Doors opened at his approach, ancient systems reacting to his presence. The princess watched closely now. The palace recognized him. By restoring power, however unintentionally, the human had fulfilled conditions written into the laws of her people long ago. Laws meant for lost ages, for heirs and champions who no longer existed. Daniel stepped into a vast hall filled with light. Crystal pillars rose toward a ceiling he could not see. Symbols glowed faintly on the walls, shifting as if alive. At the center of the hall stood the alien princess. Daniel froze. She was taller than him, slender, her features strange but not frightening. There was sadness in her posture and something hopeful in the way she looked at him. Daniel said, intelligently. "Hi!" The princess studied him with open wonder. This was the being who had restored the palace with no knowledge of its importance. This was the one who had walked into ancient halls without fear or reverence, only determination.
"You are human," she said, her voice soft but clear, translated by systems older than Daniel could imagine.
"Yeah," Daniel replied. "I get that a lot. You repaired what was broken," she continued. "You brought life back to a world long silent." Daniel scratched the back of his neck. "I just fixed my ship. If your stuff turned on too, that's kind of a side effect." The princess felt something warm spread through her chest. To her people, acts like his would have been celebrated for generations. To him, it was just survival. "Still," she said, "you stayed. You did not flee when the systems awakened." Daniel shrugged. Didn't see the point in running. Seemed rude. For the first time in centuries, the princess smiled. Far above them, the human ship continued to hum, held together by stubborn effort and imperfect repairs. And deep within the ruins, something older than empires began to hope again. Neither of them yet understood how much had changed, but the palace did, and it remembered its laws. The silence after the first meeting felt heavy. Daniel stood in the glowing hall, every sense alert but not panicked. Years as a soldier had taught him when to fear and when to stay calm. Right now, the tall alien in front of him did not feel like a threat. Strange, yes. Powerful, probably, but not hostile. The princess noticed his stance, the way his weight was balanced, the way his hands stayed loose but ready.
He was cautious, not afraid.
That alone set him apart from most beings her people had encountered long ago. "You are injured," she said gently. Daniel blinked. Huh? She gestured toward his arm. Only then did he notice the dried blood on his sleeve, the burn where a conduit had flashed earlier. Adrenaline had hidden the pain.
It's nothing, he said. Just a bad day.
To my people, the princess replied. Such damage would have required rest and ritual healing. Daniel gave a small smile. Humans don't really do ritual. We just keep moving. She found that answer unsettling in a way she could not explain. The princess introduced herself with a name made of sounds too complex for human speech. The palace translated it as best it could, rendering a simpler version for Daniel's understanding. He repeated it, probably wrong, but she appreciated the effort. My name's Daniel, he said. I'm not supposed to be here. You are here, she answered. That is enough. They walked through the palace together, though Daniel did not realize how carefully the building adjusted itself around him. Lights brightened where he stepped. Pathways shifted to easier angles. The ancient structure was observing him, measuring him, and quietly approving. Daniel noticed the changes, of course. He just assumed it was advanced automation. Nice place, he said honestly. Bit drafty, but I've seen worse. The princess almost laughed. Almost. As they moved, she explained fragments of her world's past. How her people had built cities that touched the sky. How they believed their technology was a reflection of their perfection. How, when decline came, they could not accept it. They chose sleep, she said softly, to wait for a future that might never arrive. Daniel frowned. And you? I was chosen to remain, she replied. A symbol, a hope. That's a lot to put on one person, he said. Yes, she agreed. They reached a balcony overlooking the ruins. From here, Daniel could see his ship in the distance, small and battered against the vast alien landscape. Smoke no longer rose from it. The repairs were holding, at least for now. Your vessel is fragile, the princess said. Daniel snorted. You should have seen it before. She tilted her head. It functions because you accept imperfection. That's one way to put it, Daniel said. Another is that we don't get the luxury of waiting for perfect. The princess considered that, in silence. Deep within the palace, ancient systems continued their evaluations. The laws, dormant but absolute, compared Daniel's actions against old criteria. Restoration, protection, presence without coercion. Conditions were being met. Daniel spent the next hours working again on his ship, this time with the palace supplying power he did not ask for, and tools he did not understand, but somehow knew how to use. The princess watched, sometimes asking questions, sometimes simply observing. Why do you speak to your machine? She asked at one point. Daniel looked up from an open panel. Helps me think. Also, if I'm nice to it, maybe it won't explode. That is not logical, she said. No, he agreed cheerfully, but it works. She noticed how often he paused to rest, even when tired, how he ate quickly and without ceremony, how he checked the sky often, always aware of time passing. You plan to leave, she said finally. Daniel hesitated. Yeah, I mean, I should.
This place is incredible, but it's not my home.
Neither is it mine, she said quietly. She stood very still, hands folded, eyes fixed on the horizon. The loneliness in her voice was not dramatic. It was simple, honest, and very old. Daniel closed the panel he was working on and wiped his hands. You don't have to be alone, he said carefully. I mean, maybe not me, but... There's gotta be someone out there. There is no one, she replied. My people are gone. Other civilizations avoid this region. They fear what they do not understand. Daniel thought of his own unit, scattered or dead, of messages that would never be answered. Yeah, he said softly. I get that. Night fell over the ruins, though the palace remained bright. Daniel sat on a low stone wall, eating a ration bar, while the princess stood nearby, gazing at the stars. Those stars were once ours, she said. Now they are just lights. Daniel followed her gaze. They're still stars, he said. Doesn't matter who names them. She looked at him then, really looked at him, at the tired human who refused to treat the universe like it owed him anything. You changed the palace, she said. I flipped some switches, Daniel replied. No, she said. You changed how it responds. Far away, beyond the planet's quiet orbit, something noticed the sudden surge of old energy. Faint signals echoed through deep space. Automated probes, scavengers, and things less defined adjusted their paths. The universe was paying attention. The princess felt it through her systems, a distant pressure like an approaching storm. Others may come, she warned. They will want what remains here. Daniel stood, stretching. Then I should finish fixing my ship and leave, she said. He did not answer right away. That night, the palace adjusted again. Rooms formed near Daniel's ship. Environmental controls softened. Defensive arrays ran silent diagnostics. The laws, ancient and patient, moved closer to activation. The princess did not sleep. She watched the human rest near his ship, arms crossed, expression calm even in unconsciousness. For the first time since her awakening, she allowed herself to consider a future that was not written by old rules alone. And for the first time in a very long time, the palace was not lonely either. Morning came slowly on the ruined world, not with birds or cities waking, but with light spreading across stone and crystal. The palace adjusted its glow to match the rising sun, warming the air just enough to be comfortable for a human body. Daniel woke before the light fully reached his face. Old habits. He sat up near his ship, rubbed his eyes, and took a slow breath. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he saw the ruins, the glowing paths, and the distant towers that had stood longer than human history. Yeah, he murmured. Definitely not home. She always was. Sleep for her was optional now, more memory than need. She stood on a high terrace overlooking the palace grounds, watching Daniel as he checked his ship's systems again. Everything about him was routine. The way he moved, the way he double-checked even things he had fixed the night before. To her people, repetition had once been a sign of inefficiency. To her now, it looked like care. The palace sent her alerts. Long-range sensors were picking up faint distortions. Not ships yet, just attention. The kind that came before interest turned into action. She descended the steps and approached Daniel as he worked. You are worried, she said. Daniel glanced up. That obvious? Yes. He sighed and leaned back against the hull. This place lit up like a beacon. Old tech! Big power surge! Sooner or later, someone's gonna notice. They will not come in peace, she said calmly. Most don't, Daniel agreed. Doesn't mean they'll attack. Some folks just take things apart and call it business. She did not fully understand the word business, but she understood taking. The palace understood too. Ancient protocols shifted. Defensive systems did not activate weapons. Instead, they prepared barriers, cloaking fields, and misdirection arrays. Tools meant to discourage, not destroy. Long ago, her people had believed control was better than force. Daniel noticed changes on his scanner. You doing that? He asked.
Yes, she replied. The palace is responding to potential threats.
Good, he said. I'd rather not deal with visitors. She studied him. You speak as if you have faced many such moments. Enough, Daniel said. You learn patterns. The universe repeats itself.
As the day went on, Daniel continued repairs, but now the palace assisted openly.
Tools floated to him when he needed them. Energy stabilized circuits before they failed. It was like working with a very quiet, very smart partner. Still, the ship was not ready for long travel. It'll fly, Daniel admitted to himself. Just not far. The princess listened. You cannot return to your people. He nodded. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That does not trouble you? She asked. It does, he said honestly. But stopping doesn't fix it. She considered that. Her people had stopped everything to avoid loss, and still, they were gone. As they walked through the palace again, she began to explain the laws more clearly. Not as commands, but as history. Long ago, she said, my people believed the palace itself should choose who protected it, not by blood alone, but by action. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Smart building. It observed, she continued. Those who repaired, who defended without demand, who stayed when they could leave. Daniel slowed his steps. That sounds specific.
It is, she said.
And very old. He looked around at the glowing walls. Let me guess. I checked too many boxes. The palace pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat. Yes, the princess said. You. Daniel exhaled. I didn't mean to sign up for anything. I know, she replied. That is why it matters. They stopped in a chamber filled with faint holograms. Ghostly images of her people appeared, tall and elegant, moving through streets that no longer existed. They were certain they would return, she said. They trusted the future to be kind. Daniel watched the fading images. The future doesn't promise kindness, just chances. Be turned to him. And what do humans do with chances? He thought about it. About wars and mistakes and miracles, held together with hope and stubbornness. We try, he said, even when it's messy. Outside the palace, the sky shifted. High above the atmosphere, distant probes drifted closer, confused by the signals they detected. The palace bent light and energy around the planet, masking its true strength. Daniel felt it in his bones. Someone's close, he said. Yes, the princess replied. They are cautious. Smart, Daniel said. Means they might leave if it's too much trouble. The palace projected false readings. Empty ruins. Dead systems. A world not worth the effort. The probes hesitated. Hours passed. Then they withdrew. Daniel let out a long breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Guess we scared them off. You did, the princess corrected, by staying. That night, they shared food. Real food this time. Grown by palace systems that had once fed an empire. Daniel ate slowly, savoring it. This is better than ration bars, he said. She watched him with quiet amusement.
High praise. As the stars brightened, the palace projected maps of nearby space. Trade routes.
Dead zones. Safe paths. You could remain, she said carefully. Not as a prisoner, not as a ruler, but as yourself. Daniel stared at the map, at the empty stretches between stars. And do what? Live, she answered. Help rebuild what can be rebuilt, or simply exist without running. He closed his eyes for a moment. The idea settled in him, heavy and tempting. I don't want to take something that's not mine, he said. You are not taking, she replied.
You are giving and choosing. The palace responded to that word.
Choosing. Deep systems unlocked further protocols. Waiting. Daniel opened his eyes. I won't promise forever, he said. Humans are bad at that. She smiled, softly. I do not ask for forever, only for now. Above them, the stars continued their slow dance. The universe moved on, as it always did, but on a forgotten world. Between broken stone and ancient light, something new was forming, not an empire, not a conquest. Just a shared path, built one imperfect step at a time. The palace woke before dawn, not with alarms or flashing lights, but with a quiet shift in its awareness. Sensors reached farther than before, brushing against something solid and intentional. This was no drifting probe or passing signal. This was movement with purpose. The princess felt it instantly. The palace was part of her, and she was part of it. The alert flowed into her thoughts like cold water. They are here. She stood from where she had been watching the stars fade and turned toward the open halls. Light followed her steps, soft but urgent. She did not feel fear. Not exactly. What she felt was responsibility. Daniel was already awake. He sat near his ship, a mug of warmed, nutrient drink in his hands, staring at his scanner with a deep frown. Let me guess, he said without looking up. Company. Yes, the princess replied. Multiple vessels. They remain outside the atmosphere. Daniel sighed. Scavengers? Most likely. He set the mug down and stood, stretching his shoulders. Then we do this, the smart way. The palace listened closely. Daniel walked, slow and calm, back toward the main hall. The princess followed, watching how easily he moved through a place that had once required strict ceremony. The palace did not resist him. It adjusted. They want tech, Daniel said as they walked. Not a fight. If they think this place is empty or unstable, they'll back off. And if they do not? She asked. Then we make it inconvenient, he replied. Nobody likes complicated. The scavenger ships remained in high orbit, sending out careful scans. What they saw did not match their expectations. The energy readings were inconsistent. Ancient systems flickered on and off. Defensive signatures appeared incomplete, damaged, unreliable. It looked like a half-awakened ruin. The palace was very good at pretending. Daniel worked with its systems, not commanding them, but suggesting. He rerouted energy to create false echoes. He let some corridors power down while others flared briefly, then faded. He created the impression of a place barely holding together. Messy, he said with satisfaction. That usually scares people. The princess watched him, fascinated. Her people would never have allowed such disorder, even as deception. Yet the result was effective. The scavengers sent a small drone into the upper atmosphere. It was unmanned, cautious. The palace allowed it. The drone's sensors filled with conflicting data. Gravity fields shifted unexpectedly. Communications lagged. Automated warnings filled its systems. It retreated almost immediately. Daniel nodded. Good. That's step one. Hours passed like this. Small tests. Careful probing. Each time the palace responded just enough to confuse and frustrate, never enough to provoke. But the scavengers were patient. They are debating, the princess said, reading the patterns of their signals. Some wish to leave.
Others believe the risk is acceptable. Daniel rubbed his chin. There's always one like that. What will you do? She asked. He thought for a moment.
Then he smiled. Talk. The palace hesitated. Communication with outsiders had once been tightly controlled. The princess felt the pause. They may deceive you. Sure, Daniel said. So will I. He stepped into a chamber where ancient transmitters still waited. The palace adjusted frequencies to match common trade bands. Daniel cleared his throat and sent a simple signal. Unidentified vessels in orbit. This is a civilian engineer on the surface. This world is unstable.
Recommend you move on.
The response came faster than expected.
Civilian engineer? This site is classified salvage. Identify yourself.
Daniel shrugged. They never like simple answers. He responded. Name's Daniel Reyes. Ship's busted. I woke up half this place by accident. It's not safe. The scavenger crews argued among themselves. Some scans showed immense potential. Others showed catastrophic risk. Finally, another message arrived.
What kind of danger? Daniel glanced at the Princess Depreya.
She nodded once. Old systems. Daniel replied. No central control. Feedback loops. I almost cooked myself, fixing my ship. You dock wrong, you might wake something worse. That was not entirely untrue. The scavengers hesitated again. They had lost ships before to ancient traps and half-dead machines. Profit meant nothing if you did not survive to spend it. Still, one captain pushed forward. We will send a landing team. Daniel exhaled slowly.
Okay. Plan B. The palace shifted.
Defensive arrays did not activate weapons. Instead, it adjusted gravity fields near the landing zone, making movement awkward but not harmful. Lights flickered erratically. Doors opened and closed, out of sync. The landing team arrived to confusion. Their equipment malfunctioned. Their maps failed. The ruins seemed to change shape when they were not looking. All ways led back to where they started. One of them laughed nervously. This place is cursed. That word carried weight. The palace amplified subtle sounds. Wind through stone. Deep vibrations that felt like distant breathing. Nothing threatening. Just enough to unsettle. Daniel watched through sensors, expressions serious but calm. They'll leave, he said. Nobody steals from a place that feels wrong. The princess studied him.
You do not enjoy this. No, he said, but it beats hurting people. Within an hour, the landing team retreated.
Their ship lifted off in a hurry, sending urgent messages to the others. Too unstable.
Not worth it! One by one, the scavenger vessels adjusted course and jumped away.
The sky grew quiet again. Daniel leaned against a console and laughed, soft and tired. Well, that worked. The palace relaxed. Systems returned to normal. Light steadied. The false damage faded. The princess felt something loosen inside her chest, a tension she had carried since awakening. You protected this place, she said. Daniel shrugged. It protected me first. They walked out onto the balcony together. The ruins looked peaceful again, bathed in evening light. You could have left, she said.
Before they arrived. Yeah, he admitted.
But then they might have torn this place apart. And that mattered to you. He looked at the ruins. Then at her. Yeah.
It did! The palace made its decision!
Deep within its core, ancient laws completed their cycle. Conditions were fulfilled not by force or claim, but by choice. Protection given freely. Presence maintained without demand. Care shown where none was owed. The princess felt the shift like a warm current. The palace recognizes you, she said softly. Daniel frowned.
Recognizes me how?
As guardian, she replied. And something more, if you wish. He was quiet for a long time.
I don't want power,
He said.
Or titles. You would not have them, she answered. Only connection.
The word settled between them. I stayed, Daniel said slowly. Not because I had to. but because I wanted to. That is why it matters, she said. The palace lights brightened slightly, not in command, but in welcome. For the first time since her people vanished, the princess did not feel like the last of something. And for the first time since losing his unit, Daniel did not feel like he was just surviving. The universe beyond the planet moved on, indifferent and vast. But here, on a forgotten world, a choice had been made. Not to rule, not to conquer, but to stand, together, when it would have been easier to walk away. The world felt different after the scavengers left. Not quieter, but steadier, as if the planet itself had decided to keep breathing instead of holding its breath. The palace lights no longer flickered with uncertainty. Systems settled into a calm rhythm, balanced and alert without tension. Daniel noticed it first while checking his ship one last time. The readings were better than before. Not perfect, but improved. The palace had adjusted power flow around his repairs, reinforcing weak points instead of correcting them outright. It was considerate. "You're spoiling me," Daniel muttered to the ship. The princess approached, her steps light, her presence no longer distant or formal. She had changed, too. Where once she moved like a memory walking through ruins, now she moved like someone who expected tomorrow to come. "The palace responds to you," she said. "It has accepted your methods," Daniel smirked. "Low standards, then." She smiled. Fully this time. Not a careful expression, not a practiced one. Just honest warmth. They walked together through the open halls. No destination in mind. The palace did not guide them. It waited. "My people believed stability came from control," the princess said. "From rules that never bent. And when things changed?"
Daniel asked.
"They broke," she replied. Daniel nodded.
"Yeah, that happens." They stopped near a wide window that looked out over the ruins. In the distance, small machines were moving. Repair units, long dormant, now active again. They were not rebuilding the old cities exactly. They were adapting them. Strengthening foundations. Removing structures that could not be saved. The palace was learning. "So," Daniel said carefully, "what happens now?" The princess considered the question. For centuries, her future had been defined by duty alone. Now, that weight felt lighter, shared. "Now," she said, "we decide." Daniel let out a breath.
"That's a dangerous word." "Yes," she agreed, "but also a hopeful one." The palace responded, projecting a map not of territory, but of possibilities.
Areas of the planet that could support life again. Systems that could be restored slowly, safely. Paths that led outward toward other worlds, if they chose to reconnect. Daniel studied it all. "You don't have to stay hidden forever," he said.
No,
She replied. "But we do not need to rush." He smiled at that. "I like that plan." Later, Daniel stood by his ship, toolkit in hand, looking at the hull one last time. It could fly. Not far, but enough. Enough to leave. The princess joined him, stopping just beside the wing.
"You are thinking about departure," she said. "Habit," Daniel admitted.
"I always keep an exit," she nodded.
you may still leave.
"The palace does not bind you." He looked at her. "Do you want me to?" The question was simple. The answer mattered. "No," she said. "But I would not stop you." Daniel considered the stars above them, the endless pull of motion, of running from one place to the next. Then he set the toolkit down. "I think," he said slowly, "I'm tired of going nowhere." Something gentle and powerful moved through the palace. Not celebration. Recognition. The princess closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, there was relief there. And something more. "There is one last law," she said. "One that was never meant to be enforced, only accepted." Daniel raised an eyebrow.
I had a feeling,
She explained it without ceremony. Not as destiny, not as obligation.
Simply as a bond offered when two beings chose to protect a world and each other without being forced. It is not ownership, she said. It is partnership. Daniel listened quietly. When she finished, he scratched his chin. So, he said, if I say no, then nothing changes, she replied. You remain welcome, free. And if I say yes, then we build something new, she said. Together, Daniel thought of his past, of commands shouted through comms, of orders that never asked what he wanted, of losses that left no room for choice. Then he looked at the ruins becoming something else, at a world healing not by returning to what it was, but by becoming what it could be. I don't believe in perfect systems, he said. The princess smiled softly. Neither do I. Anymore? Good, Daniel said, because I'm kind of a mess. That, she replied, is why this works. He reached out, hesitant, giving her every chance to step away. She did not. The bond was not dramatic. No flash of light, no surge of power, just a quiet alignment, like two paths finally crossing. The palace accepted it, not as a command, as a choice. In the days that followed, life returned to the world in small, meaningful ways. The palace grew gardens instead of monuments. Systems prioritized shelter over spectacle. Old machines learned new purposes. Daniel helped where he could, fixing what broke, breaking what needed change. The princess learned from him, and he learned from her. They argued, sometimes. They laughed, often. When distant ships passed through nearby space, the palace no longer hid completely. It simply did not invite trouble. Rumors began to spread of a lost world that was not empty, of ancient tech guided by a strange logic, of a human who did not conquer, but stayed. Daniel never claimed titles. The princess never demanded reverence. They worked side by side, equal in choice if not in origin. One evening, as the stars burned bright and steady, Daniel sat on the palace steps and looked out over the land. Funny thing, he said. I fixed my ship so I could leave. And now? The princess asked. Now, he said, smiling. I'm fixing a world so I don't have to. She sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The universe did not change because of them. Empires still rose and fell. Stars still died. Space remained vast and uncaring. But on one forgotten planet, humanity had done what it always did best. Not by force, not by destiny, but by showing up, refusing to give up, and choosing connection over control. And that was enough.